What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Preach Jacobs with the Worthy Cause podcast on the Arena Network. The Arena Network is the new media company that's focusing on people, arts, culture, politics in South Carolina. For more information, please make sure you check us out on the arenasc.com. I am Preach Jacobs, and today we have an amazing guest. We have South Carolina Democratic Party Chair Christale Spain, and she is also the first Black woman to be elected chair of the state party or any political affiliation, regardless if it's left or right. She is the first Black woman elected. Want to welcome our guest today, Ms. Christale Spain. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Preach, thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. I would say one of the things that I'm really interested in, anytime that I'm speaking to someone on the pod, one of the things that I think is really important, my thesis question for everyone is, me as a creative, anytime you want to do anything, people always say, get out of South Carolina, leave South Carolina. And I tell people that if you make a decision to stay in South Carolina, that is a revolutionary act. So my question would be, tell us about yourself, tell us why South Carolina, tell us the history of you, and how did you get involved politically in the state of South Carolina?
Oh, wow. Why South Carolina? Well, I am born, raised, bred in South Carolina. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. My parents are from Horry County and Georgetown County. South Carolina native. I got involved in politics. I'll tell you. So I graduated from the University of South Carolina at Aiken. And I worked in social work on the placement side of social work, on the placement side of foster care for 10 years at a group home. And one day I just, it was kind of a build-up, but I ended up quitting one day because it just, was not where I needed to be. And so I stayed unemployed for about a year. And a good friend of mine told me, he said, well, you need to make sure that you volunteer because you don't have a gap in your resume and yada, yada, yada. So it was 2012. So I went in to go help with Obama's re-elect. And I ended up volunteering for the state Democratic Party. I was probably their only volunteer that was coming in because everybody was, helping Obama. So not many people helping the party with the down ballot races. So I started doing that, going in every day, doing, whatever I could do. And when I kind of started to recount this, my story and my journey for when I was running for this position, I started thinking to myself, like, I was completely unemployed. How was I paying for gas to go be a volunteer, right? And so I just showed up every day, and they finally offered me a job. They needed somebody to answer the phones. And I'll never forget that they wanted a front desk worker, and would I be interested? But it was only paying $10 an hour. And I'm like, and I'll take it because right now I'm making $0 an hour. That's how I got involved. At that time, I had a master's degree, but $10 was way more than zero, so I took it, and I haven't, looked back since.
So I'm wondering, speaking of why South Carolina, tell us about how South Carolina became the first Democratic primary in the nation, and why do you think on a national level, on a national level, Democrats chose South Carolina, and what's the importance of that?
Well, it became the first in the nation after I wasn't the chair at the time, but tremendous lobbying efforts, from our then state party chairman, Trav Robertson, Congressman James Clyburn, and some other folks were weaved in there. That South Carolina had just played a pivotal role in the in the election of Joe Biden. For probably over a decade, we were first in the South. And we were a state really that kind of like, how do I say, like course corrected. If you remember in 16, when Hillary was running against Bernie, Bernie had a little bit of a lead. And when she got to South Carolina was like, no, we going with Hillary. And so people started, kind of like, South Carolina was the first state in the South, which meant it was the first state where you saw a big Black electorate. So you had New Hampshire, you had Iowa, so South Carolina ended up being this course correction. And so we've been on the national stage, had been on the national stage for about a decade doing that. And so I think that with the efforts from the local Democrats here and some national Democrats, it made sense. Biden was the first person who had the guts to change the calendar because it hadn't been changed in 30 years, probably longer than that. And it really no longer reflected the diversity of our party. And so he had the courage to say that we can't keep starting with, these predominantly white states when the base of our party is black.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because there's a documentary South of Black Power that I thought was really interesting where kind of like I was saying as a creative, everyone is always telling me, oh, move to New York, move somewhere else. But this theory is saying that like, look, if we want real political power on the national level, there's an encouragement of black people moving back to the South because that's where the highest concentration of black people are.
Yeah.
What do you think about? I just spoke with Jonathan Eig, who just won the Pulitzer for the King biography last week, and one of the things I thought was really interesting is wondering what is it about the South and black politics that can have the consciousness of the nation? Why do you think the South in particular, what about being from South Carolina gives you perspective that you think you can apply on a national level that, hey, if the Dems are asking, you can say, hey, Mr. Biden, here's what you need to pay attention to?
I feel like it's where black folks in America began, right? They just opened that thing down in Charleston. I can't remember the statistics, but it's a very high statistic of the amount of African Americans across the country that can trace at least one relative back to South Carolina. So I just feel like South Carolina and the South is where we came in from Africa and where we helped started building this country. And so I think it's where everybody's roots really lie. And so I kind of think that's one of the reasons, just because we're just so, how do I say, rooted in the South. And I don't know what else why else, but I just think that there's just such a high concentration of African Americans, of black people, however you want to define it, in the South. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that question.
Yeah, it's really funny, right? It's like asking me when did you fall in love with your mama or something like that. It's something that's like it's just something that's just part. Yeah, right. Like it's just something that's a part of you. I'm wondering what you are hearing when you're talking to people and more specifically, I'm always interested in wondering what young black folks are thinking about the voting process, right? I always say that even though there's a national election that's going on, are you active locally, that type of thing. And there's seemed to be, I wouldn't say discouragement that I've been hearing amongst young people, but my question would be, what are you hearing from people that might not be as enthusiastic this go around, and what are some of the solutions that you think that we can offer, and what's the direction of the state party that could help answer some of these doubts and questions? Because I know things kind of look bleak at times, but I think that's more important for people to be involved, right?
Yeah, and that's just what I always say, is to get involved. Like, what is the issue? Like, when I talk to young people, and you're exactly right. Right, they feel discouraged. They feel, I don't want to say left out of the political process, but they don't really, I don't want to say understand, since we don't really teach civics in school anymore. Like, I don't think they start at that baseline knowledge of who does what, why you got to vote, who you vote for. This person, this elected official is responsible for doing this for your community. So they don't have that baseline, and I think they get discouraged because they're expecting too much from the wrong officials, right? Sometimes I tell people, you're worrying about your local community. That's what your county council and your mayor, Biden's responsible for your community not having a park. You know what I'm saying? There are things that you can impact right now, every day, at least monthly, by going to city council meetings. So I try to help remove the veil of misunderstanding, just about, like, who the political process, as far as like what elected officials' roles are, but get involved and figure out what that issue is that is mobilizing them. I think that one of the biggest mobilizing issues that we of our time right now is abortion, and I see a lot of young people who finally realize what that meant to their life. Just get energized behind that issue, and they get locked into groups that are just really doing that. Like, of course, like Planned Parenthood is the biggest one that does, activations all the time around abortion. But even things like, marijuana and criminal justice reform, that was a big issue for me. I worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016 when he was running against Hillary Clinton, because that was such a, I was working at the party, but it was the time of Trayvon Martin's death, all those things. I'm a mother of a young Black son, and so that just cut to my core. And so it mobilized me to leave the party and go work for Bernie Sanders' campaign, because it's my issue. And so I tell them my story as well, right? Like, people get moved by politics based on, when the government affects or doesn't impact your life the way that you think it's supposed to, it kind of moves you to start taking some action and getting some understanding. So when I'm talking to young people, that's one of the things that I tell them all the time. That's some of the things I tell them all the time.
It's funny because it's like, I remember when Obama ran for his first election, and I remember hearing so many young Black people talking about that was the first time they ever voted in a national campaign, right? And there was just this huge enthusiasm. Well, it was like, I remember when he got elected, like, me and my dad are tearing up. My dad, a gangster country ass Black man. He ain't
gonna... It mattered.
Like, look, right? I've never seen anything like that, and I think that what ended up happening, and I can't speak for others, but what I think that ended up happening is that I think when Obama got elected the first time, and then the second term, in my mind, I was naive. I was like, "Oh, we good, right? Like, we good, right?" And it felt like
we're fine.
Because I felt proud of my country, because I thought that it was going to continuously step in that direction, right? And I'm like, wow, we got this first Black president, then Hillary about to roll in here, and in my mind I was like, there's no way Trump is going to win this, right? And so the interesting thing that I see, and I think that you hit on it, was that in 2008 there was this motivation for people to get involved. Young Black and brown people to get involved with the political process because they were enthusiastic. But what I started to see, during Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd murders, is that you started to see Black and brown people getting involved, running for political offices, and they never would have thought of doing that, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was, it felt like, as a Black man, finally, all the stuff that we talked about as far as injustices, as far as relationships with law enforcement, as far as injustices with dealing with the power structure, other people in other cultures felt it as well, right? Mm-hmm. And it was one of those moments where it felt like Black folks was like, see, we weren't lying, right? January 6th, see, we weren't lying, right? And so, and I don't know, like, I don't know, is using fear a good motivator to get people involved? Like, sometimes, is it just get people out to the polls? Like what is your personal perspective? Like, do you feel more hopeful than you did, a decade ago when Obama was getting his second term?
As far as like the state of the country, like, I feel like the country is in great hands with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Like, all the stuff that they have done, and it has not broken out, like, outside of the bubble. People still don't know all of the things that have happened in their community, the water, the roads, all the HBC stuff, the student loan stuff, like how major that is for a president to get that done and get it done in the first 4 years. I'm hopeful because of all the things that they've accomplished. Like, we can get stuff done, and it doesn't take forever to get it done. But I feel like people are so misinformed. I feel like misinformation, disinformation is running rampant. And I feel like there is a war brewing online, and people are asleep. Like, just the level of misinformation scares me. And when it comes up, when I'm talking to people that I know, like people who know me, and I'm like, how are you getting misinformed when you can talk? I can tell you that that's not true. Like, it's kind of like, I don't want to say radicalized is a big word, but that is kind of the word. Like that's not true. And I don't know if people know how to go and get the correct information or how to trust information. So In one word, I'm hopeful because of the president that we have in office now and the things that they've accomplished. But then I'm also, nervous because just like I said, the misinformation that gets to voters so quickly and it just spreads around and it's so hard to combat it.
Yeah, yeah, it's terrifying because I remember when Elon bought Twitter, and then all of a sudden he was just like, all right, if you got $10 a month, you can get a blue check mark to your name. And what that did for someone like me that is involved in writing for publications is that blue check mark for publications was your way of saying, hey man, we're credible, we've been vetted. And so now you got companies, you got like New York Times, like I'm not paying for this check mark, right? And so all of a sudden, the credible publications don't have check marks, and then you all of a sudden you got anybody that can put some information out, and if you pay enough money, you can get it. And so I always had this theory that when there were, conversations about, Trump colluding with Russia, I don't necessarily think that Putin necessarily wanted Trump to be president as much as I think he wanted the American public to not trust whatever we saw. Right. So it's basically like, to him, he's just like, oh, if there's no faith in the system and there's an argument of what's working and what's not working, it doesn't matter who I got in office. It's helpful that Trump was very nice to him, right? But as soon as you create the distrust, it became a tall mountain to climb. Which I think this is why it's important to do stuff like this, right? Because I think that you know we could write an essay about Crystal Spain, but to be able to but to have you be able but I think it's cool to have a conversation with you talking about these things and I think humanizing it, right? So I think the bigger thing, one of the things that I'm always interested in is figuring out practical ways for people and young people. I'm always focusing on young Black and brown people, how they can be civically engaged. And I think part of that is helping them understand, certain forms of government. So my question would be, for those that might not know, tell us about the functionality of the South Carolina Democratic Party and how it differs from the National Committee, and how do those two things work together for people that are interested in getting involved but don't know how?
So the role of the Democratic Party, the South Carolina Democratic Party, is to help Democratic nominees, help people get elected. People who are Democrats, help them get elected up and down the ballot. Um, we got 46 counties in South Carolina, so there are 46 Democratic parties, and the same exists for the Republicans. So what we do, we focus more on our state house and state senate races or the governor's race and all those constitutional offices. But we do play in state, like countywide, like the sheriff. We try to support our Democratic sheriffs and all those auditors and all those folks, just to try to keep our people elected. So that is what we do. But there's a lot of other organizational things that have to happen, and some of it is per the state law. We got to do this. Like we have to certify candidates. Um, we have to hear election protests. If somebody goes to vote or if somebody ran for office and they felt like something went wrong and it was the primary, we have to hear that protest and take it to the next level. So there are some organizational things that we do outside of that. But we also try to help expand, in getting people elected, we need to try to expand and energize and engage our base of voters. So we do things all throughout the year to try to make sure voters are informed. We have events. Of course, we are completely run off donations. So we spend a lot of time trying to raise money. So you get emails. We don't do a lot of texting fundraising, but sometimes you'll hear from us asking for dollars because that's the only way that we can survive and compete. Because South Carolina, of course, is in a super minority here in this state. So the Republicans have all the funds. Um, but the same type of structure exists at the national level. So one of our past chairmen, Jamie Harrison, is the chair of the DNC, which I was Jamie's executive director at one point when he was the chair of this party. And so that's the national party. And of course, he is over all of, I don't say over, but he is responsible to try to help build up a national program. And then there's a state party in every state and all, I think 6 of the territories. So it kind of just keeps going up, the same type of structure, right? Keeps up. And it's about getting Democrats elected, making sure voters know what's going on, doing voter engagement, voter education, voter registration. Depends on where you are. We don't do a lot of it here, just because it's expensive, and we have so many voters that voted in 2008 that hadn't showed back up again. Like, we got some people registered to get them to come back out. It's a bigger return on investment, I think. But yeah, that's what the party does.
Yeah, I think Jamie was the right person to get in there. I don't remember a time. Listen, when Jamie was running for that Senate seat, it felt that was the most hopeful I had felt in recent memory. And
Yeah,
and look, that
we're
was
going to do it. We're going to do it, right? Right
look,
there.
look, they shot one of his commercials on my street at my friend's house, but it was an emotional thing, and it was a weird thing for me because that was a moment when I realized I was in South Carolina, right? So the way that I felt like, oh, well, the country's moving forward when Obama got elected, I was just like, look at the national attention that we're getting, which, look, the only time South Carolina gets great national news is when Dawn Staley is hosting up a trophy, right? Usually when you hear South Carolina in a national sense, I get
It's not good.
if I see a headline in the New York Times say South Carolina, I'm like, oh, right? So,
What's the rest of it?
right. but but it felt like the entire country was behind Jamie. And I was like, wow, I think we're going to do it. And then I realized, I'm like, it doesn't matter what the rest of the country thinks, right? Like, being in Columbia is weird because South Carolina is a red state, but Columbia kind of feels bluish. And so I think I needed to recalibrate the way my brain kind of thinks about certain things that I might think is normal and should be that the rest of the state doesn't think this way. So that was one of those moments where I was just really, really, really heartbroken. One of the things I think that hit me with the Jamie thing, and I wrote about this, was that Jamie was going after a seat that Lindsey Graham had, and Lindsey had that seat for 20 years. Prior to that, Strom Thurmond had that seat for 50 years. So, and Strom ran for president as a Dixiecrat, which pushed segregation. And one of the articles that I wrote last week, Confederate Memorial Day was last week, and a lot of these jobs here, they try to act like they ain't giving you the day off of Confederate Memorial Day. They call it something else, but that's what it is. And I was talking about, like, in the article, like, as a black man in the South, especially in South Carolina, there's always these constant reminders. I remember during the pandemic, we would do porch parties, and I would play music, and I'm playing music on Confederate Street and in an area called Cottontown, or you see a lot of these reminders, and I remember working on Main Street and seeing the Confederate flag every day. And so you have these Jim Crow era things like beating you down. And so a lot of times when I ask, why do we stay in South Carolina? Those are one of the reasons. It's like, man, I can't leave it because there's things that I want to fight for. So I'm wondering, we talked about abortion, and after Roe v. Wade was reversed, and now it's like, oh, we leave it to the states. What are some of the things that you think are the biggest topics that you think that the Democrats should focus on in this election? And not just nationally. I also feel like, that gun law that was just passed, that just makes it easier for people just to carry. You don't need a CWP anymore, all this type of stuff. I'm really confused about that because, like I said in a previous interview, theoretically, if there's a Republican governor, they're always lockstep with law enforcement. But you got the sheriff saying, we don't like this gun law. Right. So I'm like, what's going on with this? So to me, what do you think are the biggest topics for the Dems nationally? And what do you think on a local level that you're seeing are still worthy fights?
Outside of abortion and, like you said, like the constitutional quick carry, I would say that the attack on education. And I'll give you an example, like with all the book banning. So down in the Beaufort County, down in the Low Country of Beaufort County, when we had our candidate filing, we ended up having, I don't know the number, maybe 7 or 8 women jump up to run and run as Democrats in Beaufort County, and the entire ballot is filled, which hadn't happened in a very long time, where every Republican down there. It's being contested at every level. And book banning was a big issue. Um, these women jumped up because, like, you're attacking public education, you're banning books. So that came to my mind because I saw people get up and participate in a real big way, be motivated to participate in a big way because of the book banning. But I think abortion, attacking the attacks on education, the constitutional carry, you know, people were really upset earlier in the year when the governor refused to accept the funds to feed the kids over the summer. Those federal. It's just. And so I felt like for a minute there that people were realizing just the impact of even though you can have a good president in office, but if you're still suffering under this Republican regime, we're going to miss things. And so I saw people get engaged because of that issue, because it didn't make any sense. Like, this is easy breezy. This is our money. They're giving it back to us. So that's another issue too, that folks were, and like I said, they might still be upset about it, but it's like always constantly moving. But those are the bigger issues that come to mind.
Yeah. It's always
and
weird.
The Medicaid expansion, that's always there.
It's always weird when you're talking about the feeding the kids during the summertime. I'm like, it's certain stuff. Do we have to argue about feeding kids? Like, and at some point, I'm like, what's the motivation behind pushing back at that? Like, I don't know. Like, things like that just really drive me crazy. I'll tell you a quick story about the governor that I thought was pretty hilarious. And hopefully this won't get me in trouble. But it's me saying it, not you. So I was writing for a publication in Columbia, and they would send me to do concert reviews and stuff like that. And my editor hits me up and he's like, "Hey, we got tickets to this country concert. As you can see, I don't listen to country, nothing against it. But I love Beyonce. How you doing? But I was sent to this country concert. My editor was just like, would you go write a review for this country concert? I think it was like Jason Aldean or something like that. And I said, well, look, y'all pay me, I'll go. Like I ain't never gone to a country concert, but I'll go. So for protection, I called a white homie of mine, and I was like, hey, let's go together, right? And so this is the background story to get to the governor. So he went with me, and I was so uncomfortable. My friend said, look, he said, don't feel bad. You're the only black guy in here. They're probably going to think that you're Darius Rucker, right? So, and it was funny because, like, a few minutes later into the show, Jason Aldean was like, I want to bring out somebody onto the stage. And he brought out Darius Rucker. He was like, oh, no, your cover's blown.
Right? He's already here.
But the way that I wrote the review, it wasn't like, oh, I didn't see any MAGA flags and nothing like that. But it was kind of like me as a black hip hop artist going to a country concert, and it was comical in a nice way, whatever. So as a result of that, people started thinking I have a good reputation of just being open to going to concerts that I regularly wouldn't go to. So a friend of mine hit me up, and he was like, hey, you want to go see Kiss in concert? I got a free ticket for you. And I was like, I've never seen Kiss. Fine. Like, we'll go. And it's exactly what you think. It's full of mullets and older dads, and it's these really basic, cheesy songs, but it's loud, loud, loud. And there was a part in the concert, Kiss, and the guys like playing the guitar and spitting out blood. There's somebody up front on the stage, like near the stage, losing his mind. And I'm like, who in the world is this super fan going crazy? So I pull out my binoculars, and lo and behold, it's the governor going crazy to Kiss, like, I mean.
Find out what?
Look, when the dude from Kiss started spitting blood out, he's like, ah! I've never seen anything like that in my life. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. So I don't know. So maybe that's an opening. But we need to get him to do something. We need to pretend like we're Kiss fans. But yeah.
About Kiss.
Mick Masters was losing it. Absolutely losing it. I'm like, this can't be real. I mean, losing his absolute mind. So yeah, so that's that's my story that I got. I don't know, but yeah, um, I think I took up enough of your time. Is there anything that I think um I always wonder if there's practical ways to get people involved with stuff, right? So I always say that when trying to encourage young people to be civically engaged, they always think that it's literally going to a booth and voting. But I always say that like there's other ways that you could be civically and politically active. So what are some ideas for people that are interested in being involved in the civil process that you can offer that doesn't necessarily just mean going to vote? Now, you vote too, people, please. But what are some of the things that you think that you can encourage young people to get involved in some kind of way?
I always encourage, them to get, it doesn't sound sexy or glamorous, but get involved in your county party, like where you are, especially if you're in these rural counties, Bambergs and Allendales and all these places. There are great people there who have been like holding the line for so long that would love your presence and need your support, just helping them do things on social media, helping them, which because and that's what I think sometimes our county parties end up being less strong because they don't have the band of older, younger. It's really just kind of older people in some of these places, so they miss some of the issues, they miss some of the things that are happening. But getting involved in the county party, I think is a big step. Or getting involved with any type of like clubs. There's so many like clubs out here that are talking about politics. Young Dems, they have an organization. I know the ones over in Sumter, they do like fun thing. They do like a lot of activities. They like might meet once or twice, like have a meeting, but then the next one will be like they're going axe throwing, they're going doing this, like they're doing social things to bring people in, and then they can next time they'll talk about how they need to be supporting candidates or how they can help out with the elections. But getting involved at the local level, finding groups that are like-minded. There's like I said earlier with the issues groups, or is it just finding the young Dems, the college Dems, the high school Dems are really active in South Carolina. Just joining up, finding like-minded people, and you never know where it will take you. I am in this role. I came in to volunteer. Being the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party was not on my vision board. Okay. It was not. But show up, and you'll never know what'll happen.
Well, I'm wondering if you weren't doing this, like, where did you think your career was going to go?
When I graduated from high school, W.J. Keenan, Go Raiders, I was going to be a teacher, an elementary school teacher. At some point, I wanted to be a nurse, I wanted to be a marine biologist, but I didn't even know the Democratic Party was like a place you could go. I mean, I knew I was a Democrat, and I voted for Democrats, but I didn't know the party was a actual place. But those were the things that were important to me at the time.
All right, okay. Well, look, be open. You never know what's going to happen. I really, really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me. And when we get off, I want to help more. So, like, if there's anything that I could do to help more with the local party, let me know. Because if y'all need anybody to host some stuff, I have a space. I'm a part owner of an art gallery in the Vista. I be DJing, and I got James Earl Jones is my granddaddy. So if y'all need me to voice over something, let me know. I'm kidding, but
what? That is wow.
My son Akeem. But that's just what I used to tell people all the time because look, listen, it's 3 degrees of light skin. So but growing up, I could say that I'm related to somebody light skin. I'm like, yeah, probably, right? So
I see James Earl Jones on your face right now. Now that you said it, I'm like, I can see that. You convinced me, and I'm from the community.
If they do a biopic, I definitely want to play them. But yeah. Oh, all right. So I will be in touch. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys once again for the Worthy Cause podcast. I am your host, Preach Jacobs, and we were having an amazing conversation. Thank you to South Carolina Democratic Party Chair Christale Spain for giving us the time and letting me tell my silly stories. So if you guys want to check anything else out on the arena, please visit thearenasc.com, and we'll be back soon. Thank y'all. Peace.
Thank you.